welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here in North Carolina. If you missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to watch the first episode and watch the rest like a documentary. We are a people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or a promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you. We are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We have moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Be kind and self-govern. And if you have questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I am joined on air with Greg Clarkson, regenerative farmer and ASN on Kansas. And now I am proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back, Greg. Welcome back.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope you had a nice break.
Yeah, we were on Colorado on top of the mountain for a while, so it was fun.
Nice. Anna, it's so fun to watch you these days, with all the stuff. Yeah, it's actually really cool, I think, to see. Me and Greg were actually discussing how you are like going back and forth with the guidance for the Trump administration. It's like they make a move, then you write an article with clarification, and then they pivot or something of that nature. There seems to be kind of this dance or something that's going on. And we can feel this vibration of like systemic remedy on its way or something. I mean, should they continue to keep, being cooperative, and doing the job that they're lawfully contracted to do? It seems positive, right? Like it feels. Do you feel that way too, or it's just us?
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're cleaning up their act, which is what we want. Okay,
right.
That's great. We just want them to keep on track, and we need to get our act together on our side of the fence or on our lane of the highway, right?
Right.
And so if we're doing our job and they're doing their job, then all's right in the world, and we can, have peace and abundance, and everybody can be happy, and away we go.
Right.
I think that it's very positive that they're finally getting down to brass tacks and enforcing some fiscal accountability on these different organizations, agencies, offices, and whatnot. And I'm sure that Mr. Musk will make his $2 trillion with no hard effort at all. I bet he'll make $1 trillion within 2 months, maybe 3 at most. And he'll probably make a second $1 trillion within 6 months because of the vast amount of waste and, kind of cronyistic spending that's been going on. The pork barreling has been outrageous for many years. But on top of that, I know that they're being pushed by the need to downsize 2/3 of the federal government.
Right.
So, if they've got 2 million employees, that's a large number of employees who either have to be let go, and programs that have to be let go, entire departments that have to be let go, or they have to be absorbed into the territorial government. And that isn't exactly easy in all respects because, number one, these two corporations have been competing against each other for over a decade. So you're trying to take in employees of a hostile organization in the equivalent of a hostile takeover of a corporation, right? That's why Mr. Trump is trying to downsize. That's why he sent out that, anyone who wants to take a early retirement or anybody who wants to quit, I'll give you 8 months severance pay. He's trying to make this as easy and gentle as he can and give people a quote unquote golden parachute to get out there and start rearranging their lives as something other than a federal employee. And unfortunately, not a whole lot of them are taking him up on that offer. Although I think more of them will want to as time goes on and they realize that, hey, things have really changed. These pork barrel opportunities no longer exist. The crazy days of Joe Biden and who gives a crap, that's gone. And now all of a sudden they're going to have to get back to work. They're going to have to go to work for one thing and actually show up at a desk somewhere and actually interact with people. So I think as we go forward, we're going to see more and more people being willing to stop sucking on the government teat and go back to finding a real job that actually produces something besides more paperwork and harassment and irritation of the public that they're supposed to be serving. You'll notice that among those that jumped ship rather readily were those from USAID. Quite a number of those who actually took the golden parachute option were from USAID. Now, I've said for many years, and I told people this repeatedly, that all this foreign aid stuff was a farce, and that only about 2% of it ever actually landed on the people it was supposed to help. And the rest of it was being passed off to cronies and all sorts of backdoor deals that were benefiting political parties and organizations like Hamas and ISIS and all sorts of black ops. And so we should have, gotten rid of a lot of foreign aid expenditures right from the get-go, simply because it wasn't going where it was supposed to go. I mean, if it were really providing medical care for, people in Nepal or people in Chad or people in Mali or, wherever there was need, that'd be a different thing. But it's not. I gave the example, firsthand example of something that I actually know about myself. After World War II, we had vast surpluses of DoD materials. And instead of just letting the companies get rid of the surplus, as you normally would, they used all this leftover different things like U.S. Army canteens and U.S. Army blankets and U.S. Army food utensils and all that kind of stuff. They made that into foreign aid packages and shipped it wherever, and paid the vendors for the material, right, as foreign aid, okay? And so they would do these crazy things like take a whole bunch of moldy World War II blankets, the Green Army blankets, pay full price for them, and then, ship them off to Nigeria, an equatorial African country. And you're sitting there, you're going, they basically left the Nigerians with a garbage disposal problem, and we paid full boat for this surplus crap, and then they all called this foreign aid. Well, there weren't any foreigners that really benefited from that. In fact, quite the opposite. But, that's an example of our foreign aid program. It's absolutely has been a shambles for 50 years, ever since, well, more than that. It's been a shambles since World War II. And we've just been paying through the nose year after year for things that were not helping us and we're not helping anyone else, but we're helping a bunch of political cronies and defense contractors. So that just gives you some little idea of just how bad that program has been and for how long, because I observed that in 1980. So,
man. So they were using foreign aid as our away for trash. We all know there's no away, friends. You can't throw things away, right?
Well, and it also highlights the cost plus, for these
Mhm.
contractors. It's always a cost plus environment. Nope. No chance they'll ever lose money, the companies,
Mm-mm.
Right.
which that's not reality when you run your own company.
Right. It's awful that they wouldn't even just make an attempt to break even versus profit.
Right. Right.
It's sad
Or
and pathetic.
Or how about this? If you have a whole bunch of wool army blankets that are surplus, why not send them to a cold country? Why not send them somewhere where there's some use for wool army blankets? I mean,
Yeah.
Amen. I know, right? I mean, definitely. Listen, Anna, they're doing whatever they're trying to do. We're trying to think. Me and Greg were saying this would be a great time to discuss how to get our assembly set up for a rapid education so that folks, who will be flooding our gates here, especially the businessmen, because, we're going after and talking with business people. And Greg on Kansas is basically working with their coordinator to set their assembly up from scratch. It's like 2 men and some of their friends right now. And so, that we really want to be able to get ready for him to be able to grow his state. All the rest of the states, we know that they're all in different stages. There's some that are ready for you to audit them. There's others that are just still either course correcting, starting from scratch, something of that nature. So the viewpoint we felt the most succinct as business owners was your drill assembly handbook, which really lays everything out very plainly. And I mean, most folks, Anna, they don't comprehend that they have to have, like in order for them to have remedy, we have to actually observe, or for anyone to actually observe like actual justice for the crimes against humanity. And or for us to even receive all this financial remedy, like these credits they keep wanting to know, are the banks ready? Are the banks ready? We must have our courts. And when Greg and I break down the drill assembly handbook that you wrote, we can see how the 4 pillars are plainly outlined and in support of the courts: required to bank, required to operate in commerce, and required to protect the people and their assets. And it isn't like, what we were made to believe or what we have experienced in the current day admiralty and maritime courts. Folks aren't comprehending that that is not how our courts are going to go, and that they're not just for like criminals or something. They don't comprehend this is for business. And we do. So we wanted to talk with you about that, because when we look at the framework, we can now see that the birth certificate or naturalization certificate, the 928 paperwork, the drill assembly mission statement and membership agreement, like they're all working together to offer standing for a lawful jury to protect the people from any accusation of rebellion or insurrection. Like you've really, really thought this all out, and it's really beautifully put together. It's 200 and some pages. And we were just saying, this is what everybody should really focus on, especially the business people. And with that, we know that our records must also be kept in careful order so that the assembly can protect and defend the people. And what we're finding, and the problem we're seeing on a lot of states, is they're confusing this mission statement where you plainly say, use this mission statement. We have succinctly written it. Use it exactly like this. You basically say that in the drill assembly handbook. And then the membership agreement is not to be a member on the assembly, friends. It is literally because you're a drill assembly member, a member of the jury. And it is basically, we are walking into or taking the affirmation for becoming a juror. I actually printed it out here so they can see like the form. It's just a simple form. Folks have taken this drill assembly handbook, Anna, and turned it into everything and anything that they thought they should for their state. But me and Greg have been having a really good time with it. And we're like, we just wanted to confirm with you, because as we speak with other businessmen, right, Greg? Like, I'm gonna let Greg go over this, but like, they're not interested in listening to all the hee-hawing and whatever. They just want to go like, what are we supposed to do? What is it that we have to hone in on? Ding, 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 ding. Right, Gregory?
Yeah, I think there's two perspectives to look at it. When you come from the indoctrination that we've all had, you can take the perspective of, well, what goes away? Start with the big heap, the big mound, and then pull everything away. But then the other perspective is, well, none of that matters. Let's start over here with a clean slate. Now with this clean slate, what do we need? And I think when people look at it from the stripping away from the heap perspective, they become overwhelmed. And, I try to explain to people, forget all that. Let's go back to the basis. Let's go back to the very basics. American common law, and then nation states and state assemblies, and start to build up those small pieces. And so with all this activity that's been going on, though, it's really waking people up. So many people want to believe it can be that simple, but they don't because of the indoctrination. And now we're seeing all of this with the USAID and various other things happening. I think a lot of people are realizing, you know what? It is that simple. We need to get back to those basics of where we started. And so now it's really reinvigorated me to think about, okay, what are those basics? How do we get those in place?
Well, and I think there's been kind of a confusion too that, okay, our courts for people are under American common law, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can also have admiralty courts. We can also have maritime courts under American admiralty law, American maritime law. We don't have to be under the Brits. There's no reason for us to be under the Brits. Remember that the whole inroad that they made was that at the time of the revolution, we had a very large commercial fleet, but no navy. And so in the times immediately following the end of the revolutionary hostilities, our commercial fleet was being picked off by the British and the French and anybody else that came upon our ships at sea. And they didn't have anything to defend themselves. Okay, so here are all our merchantmen being scuttled or taken as prizes, and our cargoes are not making it to their destinations. It was a terrible thing. And so we basically cut a deal with the King of Britain to act as our trustee on the high seas and navigable inland waterways and use his navy to defend our commercial fleet. And that's how that whole thing developed, where he still had his fingers in at some level on our naval and trade actions, right? Well, we don't need that anymore. We don't need that relationship. It's ridiculous. It's the American Navy protecting British shipping nowadays. And so what we need to do is renegotiate some of those old treaties to bring them in line with reality and put a forestall and end on the British King having any kind of control over our Navy and our commercial fleets, and put an end to the kind of meddling that has gone on here because we left that back door open and didn't close it a long time ago. So I consider that one of the housekeeping issues that we have is to redo some of those old naval treaties right out of the box. I mean, as soon as we get a Congress together that's duly elected and delegates and all the whole foo-foo-rah, we need to do some of this housekeeping to bring everything up to date in modern terms. And that's work we need to do.
That made me think of something, Anna, as you were describing that. Several months ago, I ordered a piece of farm equipment, and I looked all over to buy it, within America, and it wasn't available. We just didn't manufacture it. So I ended up purchasing it from South Africa. Okay, so now if you think about that, think about what all is involved there. So here I am, a farmer on Kansas, standing on the land and soil. And I can trade, in species locally, silver, gold, whatever. But how do I can't stand on the land and transact with somebody in South Africa. I have to have the ability to go to that international, and the sea comes in because obviously well, not, this was a big piece of equipment, so it was too big to put on an airplane. So it went onto a boat, a ship, and came across the high seas, probably went in some inland waterways, once it got here. I don't remember the exact route, but there's a lot of transactional aspects to that we still need to do. We still want to interact with trade partners out in the world. So when I think about that, I went through, I guess you'd say, the existing system, if you will. But it got me thinking, what does that look like when we get the GFG stood up with the various aspects of the GFG to conduct international trade? And then another thing came up in my mind here recently with this discussion of tariffs. So my comprehension, and maybe I'm wrong, but a tariff would apply to a U.S. citizen purchasing something from, say, Canada, when they were talking about a 25% tariff. Wouldn't the U.S. citizen be responsible for paying that tariff and not an American state national?
Well, the way this works is that you place a tariff on incoming goods.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, your situation, there might be a tariff of 10% on farm equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that just plain out now adds 10% to the cost of the shipper, the actual manufacturer or the company that you're buying it from. That adds 10% to their cost. So then what happens? They don't bear that cost. It just increases the cost of the farm equipment to you. So in an oddball way, tariffs wind up hurting the people that the tariffs are applied in favor of.
Right.
You see? And so we wind up getting stuck paying 10% more for everything that we import. And what that does is it then highly motivates us to, number one, buy locally, buy in country, right, and support, local producers and producers that are in this country already, because there's no tariff between Biloxi, Mississippi, and Kansas. Okay. The other thing it does is it encourages manufacturers to move here and to set up facilities here so that they can sell goods without the tariff. So it does have some good results, but it also has some downsides. And we had this entire long period of time where the rats were trying to relocate their headquarters to China. And so they were reinvesting very heavily in China, and they were, dropping all trade barriers to China so that the Chinese had access to our market, number one, without any tariffs or any obstacles in their way, no protection for the American market at all. And then at the same time, they were offshoring their manufacturing facilities in China because they wanted to access essentially a slave labor pool that they could, undercut American workers by half in terms of outflow of money. So it was a big opportunity for the Chinese labor force to get upgrades and have a better life. And, nobody's saying anything bad about that, but at the same time, it meant that American workers were getting undercut and were losing jobs and were losing benefits and pay. And so there was, again, this kind of quid pro quo thing going on where we were paying through the nose and the Chinese were getting the benefit of all of this because the market was not protected by any kind of tariff at all. Right. And that was all across the board. No matter what the Chinese were manufacturing, they had an open door to do whatever they wanted to do in terms of producing products and shipping them directly into our market. And so all the manufacturing facilities were being moved offshore to China. Everything, the banks, the insurance companies, everything that was associated with the industrial and manufacturing base went to China. And, I've observed this over time. There's been this movement of the parasite, you can trace it through history where, first it started out in Babylon, and then it moved to the Levant and to Turkey and to Crete and Egypt and North Africa. And from Carthage, it came up to Rome. And from Rome, it went to Britain. And from Britain, it came here. And now it's moving to China. And everywhere it goes, it has the same devastating effect that, it eats out the host country and then moves on to a new ground. And as it leaves, it has a kind of a burnt earth policy toward the former host, and extracts the wealth of the former host to buy their way into the new host. And so we've been seeing this ever since Reagan, when they opened up the whole thing. And people say, well, wait a minute. There's, over 1 billion people in China. Doesn't that then open up their market to the Americans and the American manufacturing? No, not necessarily.
Not if it's bilateral.
No, right. So they didn't protect our markets at all. They opened up everything wide open to China, and there was no quid pro quo. There was no answering ability for us to import our stuff on that kind of scale without tariffs to China. So I mean, there are a few.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about Reagan. I think if you go back to the discussion on post-World War II, one of the things that one of my backgrounds is working in the energy industry. That's where I ran my company, was in the energy industry. And as an example, to build a large power plant in the United States, you have to go to Japan for large forgings, for large pressure vessels, let's say. I'm talking, extremely large. Well, Japan is the only place in the world with the ability to do these large forgings and large vessels. When did that start? Post World War II. The parasite moved that capability to Japan, demolished our ability to make any large forgings. And then as we evolved, semiconductors as an example. Semiconductors, we used to have a lot of semiconductor fabs in the United States years ago. Not so much anymore. They're all in Taiwan. They just took anything, to me, with a level of sophistication like that. They've offshored it, obviously on purpose. And that's not something you just wake up one day and say, oh, I think I'll make semiconductors tomorrow. It's not that simple. The knowledge, the manufacturing capability, then just think of the knowledge loss and how long it takes to regain that knowledge on anything with any level of sophistication. So,
that's part of why I think we need to really invest in new tech and bring forward all of those suppressed patents and, start manufacturing those new technologies here. And, this tariff protection, sure, for a limited transitional period of time, it makes sense. We have had as Mr. Trump pointed out, we've had no protection for our markets from their products, but they've protected their markets from our products. Yeah, right. We've been treated like the red-haired stepchild for 100 years? And so he's absolutely right. And the Canadians do receive over $100 billion a year from our country. And yet, they want to sit up there and snipe at us. And most recently, they were preparing plans to invade and come over across our border from the north and steal a stockpile of gold that was that was in the
Great Lakes
northern
area.
New York. Yeah,
Oh, New York. Okay. Yep.
Coca-Cola.
Okay.
So they were going to come across the border and do an incursion and steal that gold and go right back across the border and share the divvies with Britain. So we've had an enemy at our northern border in the form of Britain. We haven't realized what an enemy Britain has been. Britain has been our enemy throughout our existence. When they couldn't win by force of arms, they turned around to swindling. And so they've been swindling us for 150 years. They still got what they wanted. They still got us into a position where we were de facto colonialized. They were using us as a resource dump. They were using our young people as cheap mercenaries. They have taxed us on our own land. They have taxed us on our own productivity. I mean, it's outrageous what Britain has done to us while we've been saving their bacon in 2 world wars. And it's even more outrageous what they've done to their own people. The fact that these are worthless, villainous miscreants, criminals that have abused their own people too. I mean, it's not just us. They have abused everybody. They've abused their own people. They've abused us. They've abused the Canadians. Everywhere they've gone, it's been a history of use and abuse, lies, fraud, con games, every kind of excuse that you can think of, every kind of deceit you can think of, they have employed. The miseries of South Africa, the miseries of Australia. All of this it goes right back to the British government, which is not really a government. They haven't. One of the really wonderfully offensive things is to see how they swindled their own people. They had what they called the English Civil War, and it turns out that it wasn't a war. It was, again, a mercenary conflict. And out of that mercenary conflict, they made up this concept of Great Britain.
Yeah.
Now, everybody has heard that all their lives. Great Britain, Great Britain, Great Britain. And you've also heard it on the TV every time it seems that you saw the Queen, you heard Her Royal Majesty, Elizabeth II, Queen of England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Well, I've got news for you, folks. Britain is a company, not a country.
Yep.
And there's no way that you have a combined sovereign like that.
All right.
That was an office, a separate office that was created for the company and used to give people the false idea that she was actually acting as the queen of all 4 of those countries, when in fact she was acting as the queen over Great Britain, this company that had been created. Yes, it's been created by the Act of Union after the Civil War. And so it was a fraud. And they actually had to vacate the land of England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales and operate at sea in the sea jurisdiction. And so they defrauded their own people and have been operating in fraud ever since. And it's over 300 years that they have been operating in fraud.
You know what I find interesting, you're talking about for us Americans and all of this that's been done to us and all this fraud and deceit and control. But if you flip that around, look at what's going to happen now that we're unleashed. Look at this bright future that's out there. I think we're the most ingenious people on the planet. Americans are tough, cowboyish in attitude. we think of a lot of the ideas, they get stolen away from us and taken somewhere else. But when you unleash these abilities that we have as a people and start to give us that freedom, I think it's going to be a fascinating future for us. I think that's the bright side of it, because look at what we've done as a people with all of this burden overlaid on us for 160 years. Now take that away. It's not going to happen overnight. I realize that, but start to begin to peel it away, and wow, the sky's the limit. No, not saying I want to go to the air, but
well, anybody that takes on this country is actually taking on the entire world.
Yeah.
Because we are truly a melting pot. We really are. And we have all these many peoples from all over, all other nations. We have communities of our own native tribes. We have people from every other country that have substantial populations in this country. And they come here and they bring their traditions and their insights and their culture here. Everything from cuisine to religion and everything else that goes with their culture. And we benefit from that.
Well, and it's the most creative people of those cultures and those countries, because they were being held down and they wanted to escape that. So
Right.
so we got, in my opinion, we got the best of the best. We got the cowboys of the cowboys that said, no, we don't want to live there. We don't want to be held down. We want to go for freedom. And so that really, that diversity, and that's not necessarily a bad word. We think of it as a bad word nowadays, but that's not necessarily a bad word. That diversity of all those cultures, that creativity, it's going to be interesting to see what we can come up with together as a people, going forward.
It will. And I think that we need to either find a different word for diversity, or we need to do some sort of a redemption of the word diversity and our understanding of diversity.
Yeah.
Because all of this stuff, all of these divisions have been caused by these rats.
Right.
If you start looking at it, this whole idea that Black people were enslaved because they were Black, that's complete and utter BS.
Right.
Everybody was enslaved. The whole
Yeah.
world was enslaved. I mean,
Well,
listen,
yeah.
I was having this conversation just a little bit ago, and we were saying, I said, listen, I'm one of those Indians that's alive and observed our parents who were my parents and my uncles and my aunts, they were all living under British rule. Okay. And Gandhi and all that all of the, well, supposedly they were free from British rule in 47.
Mhm.
That was the year my mother was born in the blackouts. Okay. Well, if you talk to my uncles or my aunts or my mom, like none of them will accept that they were enslaved by the Brits. Okay. None of them. They'll say, oh, we were under British rule. I'm like, well, that's what that means. It means that you were under them, but they don't believe that. They didn't believe, they don't think of it that way. They don't want anybody feeling sorry for them. They thought that they were living their best lives, or whatever. And I mean, yeah, there's a huge population there, everybody from the untouchables, the whole caste system, all the way up. So there's an entire group of people who would argue, oh, we've always been enslaved. But I mean, when you're enslaved, the way most of the Americans don't believe they're enslaved right now.
Exactly.
I mean, they think they're free. So they're not realizing that, what does it mean to be enslaved? I don't know. Maybe if someone told you that first you're supposed to go to preschool, then you're supposed to go to kindergarten, then you're supposed to go to all the way from 1st to 12th grade, and then you're supposed to do the next thing, and then the next thing, and then go in this box, because that is the way that you're civilized life is supposed to be.
Program.
Right. It's not supposed to be. If you didn't involve your children in that, I'm gonna tell you what I experienced with my sons and daughters is when I played with them, when I played school with them, when I was home with them, when they were little itty bitties, then they learned so much in the first year that I gave them my full attention that they were doing second grade math when they were 4 years old. You can teach babies anything if you give them your full undivided attention. So imagine if you're home homesteading focused on your sons and daughters 100%. I'm sorry, those kids are not the same as the ones that are traumatized being taken away to another school building for the whole day where they literally are forced to sit still and behave and just learn how to follow the rules versus being at home with their mom and dad and family where they are just loved while they're actually contributing and producing and do the American way at home.
There's an exciting part to that, Niti. I'm Papa. I have 3 grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And one of them's a granddaughter is 5 years old, and so she'll be, she's at that point of should she enter public school or not, and they're not going to put her into public school, so we're just going to have the community sort of approach. And I do have to say, though, I think my son and daughter-in-law are a little bit concerned with what Papa's going to teach her when it's my turn.
Right, you're going to teach her how to really be free.
Yeah.
Well, look, there's always been this divide. There were Tories that loved the king and loved the king's culture and wanted to be British, and they fought us in the revolution because they wanted the nanny state. Their lives were made simple in some respects by the nanny state. As you say, there was a narrative. You grew up and you did these certain things, and you were in part of a caste system that was either something that you enjoyed or didn't, but it was secure and it was what it was. And so, yeah, there are people who prefer to be told what to do and to have the security of knowing that if they do what they're told, certain things are going to accrue one way or another that will provide a stable matrix for their lives. And so, yeah, these people that want the nanny state, those people that want to have this hierarchy, this strict hierarchy that has its rules and that they can use as a kind of a matrix within which to live, they like that. They hate being torn out of that. They love their entitlement system, where if you manage to become entitled, well, then you and your children are benefited forever afterward by your industriousness or whatever it is that you did for the queen or the king. They like that. We, however, don't like that. We're willing and able to take on the responsibility to self-govern. And that is the difference. For some people, the rough and ready road of being responsible for yourself is the only road that is. And we don't want to have somebody micromanaging our lives. We don't want to have somebody making our values judgments for us. We don't want someone telling us that our kids have to know all about sodomy by the time they're 5. We don't want people coming in and dictating to us what should be, could be, or would be. We want to take on the broad spectrum responsibility for forming our own judgments and having our own values and living our own lives without the interference of a government coming in and constantly meddling with us. And we also want to have the fruits of our labor. We don't want to be stuck with somebody else's level of government services draped around our necks. Because very soon what happens is you have everybody at the trough and nobody paying the rent. And we realize that. So, just in terms of the practicalities, we don't want a welfare society. We don't want people who grow up in welfare as the way to live. Okay? We have 3 generations of people in this country who don't know how to live apart from government subsidies. Is that any way for them or us to live?
Not at all.
There's a very vocal critic of the social welfare system. I don't know how old she is. To me, she seems young. A young Black woman named Star Parker, who has led a entire generation to realize that this welfare programming is actually a form of enslavement and limitation.
It is.
If you
It is,
become
It is.
dependent,
I mean, they're making you beholden. And if you look, I think about this same thing with the charity that they teach everybody to give to, Anna. Like it is my work to see you in your full power, in your capabilities. Like I would want to teach you to fish, not just to give you the fish.
Yeah.
well, and that's the difference. But then you have to be willing to take that knowledge and go out there on the ocean and cast your line and do the work.
But that's your free will. Look, a lot of people just choose to not want to have to do all the things. But you know what? We came into this world so that we could have our experience the way we want it. And other people have a problem watching people who might just be wanting to have that experience.
Yeah.
And look,
it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. So let's strip away a $2 trillion burden. Let's strip away 2/3 of this services that we don't need, we don't get anything from.
right.
And that's going to impact these people we're talking about, kind of 2 different sets here, entirely differently. The frontier, pioneers, creators are going to be so unleashed and so happy and so free. That's us. But then you have those other people that you're describing, Hannah, that it's going to be devastating to them. And it's going to be the challenge.
Terrifying.
Terrifying,
They're afraid of their own capability. They're
Exactly.
afraid of the responsibility. Okay?
Yep.
They feel that they're incompetent. They feel that they need someone to tell them what to do.
Well, that's all they've been taught.
Right. But when you see those people in these social experiments that people have done, they actually learn to, kind of get a grip a little bit faster. It's kind of surprising how they might turn out. And they turn out to be way more formidable than you imagine most of the time.
Well, and that's because once they really grasp that they are empowered, they explode with, oh, look at what we can do, look, and they get, they get into it. And that's the way it should be. But
they're going to be in a community, right? So while you got the people falling apart, you're going to have the other ones demonstrating what that actually could look like. I think it's going to be fine. I think it would be better if it happens with a blackout, because when there's nowhere for anybody to be plugged in, it'll be nice for everybody to watch things actually happen in reality. They'll be immersed in reality for the first time in a different way, because there won't be something competing for their consciousness. And that's what the problem is, isn't it? It's that there is a race. The corporatocracy has a race going on to control your consciousness. And that is what is interfering with their ability to connect with the reality. And the more that we unplug them from that, we can get them to comprehend your work, Anna. That's what we have to do. When we want them to, that's the reason we're starting with the farmers, because they're already unplugged most of the time. And they're more capable of comprehending this. And with that, I just have a question too, that me and Greg wanted answered. And I don't want us to forget it, Greg, but like part of the assembly handbook question is, has there already been a remedy for this, Anna, where you're saying about, for the General Assembly quorum, Is there a remedy for that already in terms of, neither people of color nor women are allowed to participate in the quorum because we're
Oh,
taking
that's
things.
an old mistake. That's an
Okay.
old mistake.
Where's the
Just
correction that
cross
we would
that right
find?
out. Just
Where
cross
would
that out.
Okay, just the whole paragraph.
What happened was we were studying this, all the historical stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that particular prohibition is for the Confederate states, the states of states.
Oh.
It wasn't, and they were just calling it states, right? And so we mistook their process and their restrictions as if it were our states, but it was that deceit. Yeah.
Minutes okay at the time?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm going to have to go, guys. It's morning mid's time, and I have to make sure that the right things get done. But anyway, I will see you all next week, and great conversation.
Thank you,
Okay,
Anna.
thank
We
you.
appreciate you. And hey, friends,
Take
we
care,
will
guys.
see you guys next Tuesday, everybody.
Yep.
Same spot,
Great
same
meeting.
bat cave, same bat station.
Right.
See
Thank
you
you.
later, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna.